hotel. We're going to come in early. This is going to be a later start in general, just because of how much time it's going to take to recover from the night before. But prior to seeing all the soundings and the observations, we're like, well, after the MCS, could it really recover? Probably not. But we haven't looked at ops yet. But we'll check. Worst case, we just go here, we hang out. We have hang out at the pool, early day, a little bit of relaxation, and then we see if things recover later. Well, by the time we're only half hour out of Amarillo, we're already like, well, this looks good. We're just going to be doing normal chasing today. Our target was, there's some terrain a little bit northwest of Tucumcari. Looking at the upper levels, there's even like a little shortwave coming through, like, hey, maybe we get initiation around here. Same as the last few days, slow southeastward moving supercells when they form. So we booked a hotel here. So we go on Holiday Inn Express website, book our hotel, and we're like, well, this is perfect. It's a short drive from Amarillo. We're going to check in. We're going to hang out at the pool till like 4 or 5 o'clock. We'll have, the sit down lunch first. We're all good to go. And then we just stroll out 20 minutes to see storms, and it lead us back to the hotel. Well, we get into town there, and there's no power.
From the storms.
There's no power from the storms the night before. So I guess the Holiday Inn's booking website is separate from the physical location, because we were able to book just fine, and we show up there. And we even had that Dell's place picked out. We're like, oh, we got this restaurant, we're going to eat there, because we got to kill time for check-in. We check in, we're at our hotel. Well, no power, so we lost our lunch option. Well, no power, what are we going to do about our hotel? We go to the hotel, and they're really uncertain of what's going to happen, describing all sorts of details, and they're like, well, where are we going to eat now? Because this is not this is like the big town for the area. So now we've run into the snag where we want our hotel to be there. We don't know if we have it anymore. It's now like 1 something and no one's eaten. And we're like, well, where is their power? Well, we passed through here. There is really nothing to eat at in this place, certainly not for a group our size. Logan had no options, so we're calling places in Logan before we drive out there. No one was picking up, so they might not have power. Down towards Clovis, the next big town, no power either, and flooding. So we just had no power, no flooding. They had no power and flooding. And they were like, well, I guess Santa Rosa is the only option if we want to eat something anytime soon. Which this is, you'll see the map scale, it's like, I don't know, it's like 60 or 70 miles west of where we want to be. So this is our target area for storms. Now we're going to have to drive west of where we actually want to be for initiation, just to get lunch. Before we drive out there, we're trying to call places. No restaurants are picking up. And so I was like, call like an auto parts store. They'll pick. So we called an auto parts store, and Dave's like, do you have power? And they're like, yeah, we have power. Why are you asking if we have power? So that's why we made those calls.
I didn't know you called like an auto store.
Yeah, because that was the only place I would pick up. So we headed westbound, got our late lunch there at that Mexican restaurant. So I was like after 2 already, eating there. All the while knowing this is where we need a hotel. If we're going to chase, this is the type of chase where into the evening, the low-level wind field is going to pick up. You're going to get structure after dark, a good lightning show. We want to be able to stay on this for that type of situation where slow-moving storms, lots of lightning, lots of structure, that's a cool thing to chase after dark. But we can't do that unless we have this hotel. Because if we're chasing out here till 11 p.m., well, we're not going to drive, hours afterwards and show up at 2 a.m. at a hotel. Clovis didn't have a hotel. Santa Rosa did, but if our storms are doing this, can we really get to Santa Rosa afterwards? Probably not. The other option is, I guess you drive way back to Amarillo, which just seems, ridiculous after what you did that day. So you're not going to chase here till like 11 and then drive to Amarillo and get there at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we were in Santa Rosa, like, we got to kill time somehow. So we went to that Route 66 museum. While there, this is like the dramatic turn of events emotionally. So while at the Route 66 museum, they called me and told me to cancel the reservation for this because they're not getting power on. So I met with the drivers trying to figure out, hey, what are you okay with? What do you think is going to be fair to do? And Joe and Dan are both great. They're like, well, do whatever you need to do. We'll drive. We'll figure it out. So we were still going to drive back out here to chase and then to say, hey, we're going to deal with getting to Santa Rosa afterwards. If it's worth the chase, we're going to do it. We're going to get a hotel in Santa Rosa. So we were just about to actually go to the hotels nearby to check for availability. And I called just to be sure with Tucumcari Hotel, and I call up and they say, we just got power back. So it went from being like, this is going to be terrible to sort this out with the logistics, to they've got power back. They're like, hey, just give us till 5 p.m. to check in. So we spent some more time hanging out here, worked our way back, checked in, put our bags, and then by that point, you could already see the Cumulus field going, and this was only like 5:30 or so. So I sent the message like, hey, be in the lobby in 30 minutes from now. So we got all unpacked, met back in the lobby, had our really short drive up to see the storms initiating over here. That was the one you have this complete time lapse of, Mike, where you see like the left split, right split, like perfect vantage point, like right in the middle. You see the two updrafts growing out away from one another. So that was easy chase in the beginning, very close to the hotel, great visibility, roads looked like they were working fine. And then came the tougher decisions where we had more of all or nothing type decisions. And I will find where we were specifically.
Where did we stop for that time lapse?
I'm going to try to find it right now. So that would have been... What did you say?
This has been like a Red Canyon. Is that what you said? Like,
This is before that.
That's before that. Because we went eastbound on 40, and then we went up 469, I believe. Or actually, no, for the first one, no, we went northwest of Logan. So we're up out over here. So we were able to jog up here, see the initial storms forming off of some of the lower terrain. This is where they were kind of sitting there. They're doing like the left split and the right split. All the while we're kind of rooting for the left split to fizzle out and the right split to be good. So we're seeing this happen. Great time lapse, great vantage point. Everything looked like it was going perfect. And I'll just draw on here, the general location of the cells. So we had these two splitting, moving very slowly. And we were sitting like in between, none of the precipitation was falling on us, so we're actually looking at both of them easily. The left split started, looking not too great, fizzling out a little bit. Right split was looking good visually. We had the wall cloud form with it. But around this time, we also had a new cell pop up to the south. And this new cell, well, if you think about where the anvil is going to go, it's out over here. We actually started getting some of the precipitation from our southern cell falling on us while looking at our northern cell. So our area of dry, good visibility, and that inflow was strong up here too. That was like one of the notable differences from the other days. Well, we now lost it. We're starting to get rained on. It's like, okay, we got to position out of the way of the rain. But as we're driving south to position, we're seeing, well, on radar and on satellite, this southern storm looks like it's starting to blow up. This northern storm here looks to be very close proximity to where they're going to interfere. And this is where he got an all or nothing decision because of how limited the roads were. This one had a nice wall cloud. We've been watching it from its development, from its first cumulus tower. But now we're seeing this is the one, if we're talking in terms of probability, has the best chance of being good. The inflow is coming out of the southeast. So this storm up here is going to get rain-cooled air from our southern storm. So the precipitation's falling out from our southern storm, impeding the inflow into our northern storm. So even though this is the best right now, it looks good visually, we're attached to it, we've been watching it for an hour already doing time lapses. Its environment should be getting worse with time, where the southern storm should be getting better with time. Now sometimes you can stick around and watch both, but this was a case where with how much daylight was now left, we're getting close on, maybe there's only like an hour or so left of daylight, and we look at our road network. If I go, if you go south out of Logan here, notice how far away this is. So these are slow-moving storms that are way back over here. This is like a 20-mile gap if we were to do this. Up here, if this storm started pushing off towards the southeast, another like strike against it, so to speak, for sticking with it, is if it crosses over 54, our chase is over on that storm. There just aren't any roads out here. So while it's the best now, it has great visibility. If it moves east, southeast, or southeast or eastward like a right-moving supercell should, our chase is going to end at some point when it crosses 54. At the same time, southern storm is going to be making this environment progressively worse with time. Whereas the southern storm, if we don't act now, because it's going to take us about a 45-minute drive to get in position, it's going to be too late. So if this storm gets going and crosses down over here, we're going to lose our opportunity to get south of it from the hail core. So this was one of the more all or nothing decisions. I would say not a harder one, but still stressful nonetheless, where you know that this should be giving you the better show for longer. If you can get south of this, you're going to see this at sunset really ramping up, and then into the overnight, you're in perfect position. It's going to be sitting there drifting slowly south, so I have a good view. But you are leaving a good storm with a wall cloud. So all the while you're driving away, you're just like, please don't do anything good. Please don't do anything good. Taking pictures of the back, and you're like, please don't do anything good, because we know we have to leave it to keep our chase going for another few hours. But that would be like the worst thing if as you're driving away, it's going to do something good up there, because you don't know for sure. It still might have a window of time before it gets interfered with, or something could happen. So we did that, headed south. Again, not great roads down here at this point. You don't want to get on the interstate because the exits are few and far between. So if you get on the interstate, you could be trapped going westbound, and then hey, the hail core is over the road. You can't get off, you can't turn around, and now you're chasing over. Fortunately, out here you have Old Route 66, which is what we took for that first stop. So we went through San John here, went on Old Route 66, and just pulled off on a side road that didn't have power lines or stuff blocking the view. So we were watching the storm out here. Now at this point it's somewhere around like this. It's still fairly far away, but we've got a clear view of the base, clear view of the wall cloud. Green colors are starting to start up. We're getting closer to sunset. And this is where, again, unfortunately, another tough decision. The orientation of the anvil and the precip on the storm was starting to turn more towards the southeast. So it would have been nice to sit here watching for the sunset with the storm, but the forward flank downdraft and the precipitation was actually creeping towards us this way. At this point, it's too late to try to go all the way into here. So notice your map scale, this is about a 20-mile drive, and then you have to go south. There's no way we could beat it. The hail core is going to cross the road before we get there. So our only option is to stay with this as well. You can try working south on terrible dirt roads in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, approaching dark, which does not sound like a smart decision. You don't know how fast you're going to go. You might get blocked with the precip approaching you, and then you're just stuck out there. Or you got to go back to San John here. And I'll tell you what David and me were looking at.
Does the satellite picture help with like the
Yeah, so we'd be using both the maps and the satellite. Just for the sake of data, I'm going to keep this up since it's preloaded. I don't want to risk, wiping out our map here. But yeah, we were looking up by Wheatland. We had this high terrain. On satellite, you can see very easily it was just all farm fields up on top of it. So you had like these big bluffs out there you saw in the distance. Hey, if I get on top of that, it's all flat farm fields, better road network. Down here, more of a poor road network. But this is a long drive, so we're at this position, a couple miles back to San John, and we're looking and we're like, well, we got to get all the way out towards Wheatland, basically, to get up on top of the bluffs, and then have westbound options that are going to be clear of the precip core. And that was a tough decision to make, where not a whole lot of daylight left, and we're saying we're going to sacrifice about 75% of our remaining daylight to position ourselves in front of this storm for longer. There would be a lot of days where I wouldn't make that decision. With how slow moving it was, and seeing all these great escape options for that slow moving storm later, this was saying, well, as long as nothing imminent is happening, like say we see a tornado dropping, we're going to pull over and look at it. But if that doesn't happen, we're going to give up a lot of our daylight planning for a nighttime chase here. We're going to be the first out here, we're going to pick the best spot, and then we're going to be sitting here waiting for the storm overnight, ideally illuminated by lightning, seeing all the structure. And then when we're done, we can go back around this way, back up to town for our hotel. So at that point, we're going southbound towards Wheatland here, and we see, hey, we can even go further on down towards Grady. So initially, we were thinking, hey, maybe we'd go up by Wheatland. Now you're up on top of the terrain. You're in the flat area. We're like, well, we know we've got this main highway here. We can do this loop around and then come back closer towards our storm. Again, we're sacrificing a lot of our remaining daylight, but we can make it. Fortunately, we found there's actually a paved road right in here. So that actually saved us probably 14 miles of driving. That we found a passable road south of Wheatland we could just cut across and save our time. So then we went over here. One of the things we noticed about the higher terrain some of that bluff had a little bit of like a lip upwards, where even though you're on the flat high grounds, you couldn't really see cloud base. Or if you could see cloud base, you couldn't see the ground underneath it. Looking at how the environment was going, we're thinking, well, there's a nighttime tornado chance. We don't want to be somewhere where we can't really see what's going on down at the ground. So even though we can see the storm structure, because we do think there's a tornado chance, we're actually going to drop back down into the lower elevation so we can get closer and see what's really going on underneath the storm. So we cut across here, went back down through the switchbacks again. Try to drag the screen here. And I'll show you where our storm was positioned. So our storm was out in this region at this point. Here's some of the switchbacks. And we actually found that nice little vantage point right about here, with our storm very slowly creeping in this direction. And we got there, right, we still had a little bit of the sunset colors left, so a little bit of daylight. Everyone's set up here, and now we're perfectly positioned. We have an escape route we've already driven on, so we already know the condition of this road. We know it goes back to here. We have an eastbound, a southbound, a westbound, any escape route you can think of. All of these roads actually have been driven on, so it's not unpredictable what the condition is. We just drove on it 10 minutes ago. And this big supercell right mover drifting out over here, perfect vantage point. So I'd say that's probably the declining storms is cool. Maybe this is more the highlight for me of having that long in one spot. Just watching this with the transition from daylight to overnight, seeing the lightning, the structure, all that coming together.
How long would you say we were sitting there?
I think it could have been close to 2 hours, honestly.
About that.
We were there a long time. Oh, I can look at the timestamps, but I think we were in this position about 2 hours.
I've never seen a storm sit like that long.
Yeah.
It's still gaining intensity.
Yeah, so it's continuing to intensify into the overnight, slowly drifting towards us for like 2 hours while we're sitting there. And you saw briefly, you'd see some lowering of the wall clouds, some rotation in there, but not quite doing it. And here's where some more luck comes in. So this is going on, and okay, we're in our proper position. But at some point we're noticing, and David was noticing this visually, he's saying, well, on the southwest side of this, I'm seeing what looks to be some lowering in rotation. So we were focused on dead ahead, like the original wall clouds, and they weren't producing. So he notices towards the southwest, hey, it looks like something's going on back there. Keeping in mind, we're so far away from radar, you're really not getting much of anything going on. Like, hey, you've got a rotating storm up in the mid-levels, but down near the ground, who has any idea what's going on with radar?
I know that at that point when we were sitting there, watching that wall cloud just kind of sit, rotate.
Yeah.
I did try calling on it. I don't know if anyone had heard. I did see a funnel forming at one point. So I don't know if anyone else had seen that. We saw power flashes or something.
Yeah. So that's where, kind of coinciding with what I'm about to say here. This would be the rear flank downdraft side. Out in this area, looking northwest, we saw, I don't know what happened there. We saw occasional power flashes, so we know we had this big, powerful RFD. I think you even saw some wind reports out there, like, I think there was like an 80 mile per hour or something like that at one point. So big RFD here, but we're still in inflow. And that was kind of a cool experience with the terrain. You'd feel it channeling through the terrain. You get like these changing in wind directions with the gusts when it was coming down the canyon road behind us. But around this point, we're watching and we're saying, well, we've had a good view on what's directly in front of us. And it's since, the wall cloud's gotten more ragged, it's lifted up. But we're seeing through the rain back here some lowerings. We know we've got a strong RFD over here. So maybe this is a part of the storm we want to see more so. And then at the same time, we saw back over here another storm moving towards town. And we're looking at this, it's already like 10 p.m. or so, and we're saying, well, this is kind of interesting in here. And we really need to get to town before this next storm hits it. At the same time, our original area we had eyes on wasn't looking as great. The structure was dissipating a little bit. Remember, we had more cloud in front of our lightning, so we're starting to lose some of our view. So we were looking at our road network saying, hey, well, what if we do this and we thread the needle between our storms and get back to our hotel before this next storm hits town? So this was our intent. So we're going to drive down here, thread the needle. If this storm here, the area of interest, if it's too close to the road, well, we just turn around and okay, we do the long trip back to the hotel. Not the end of the world. We're going to try to beat it in to get in earlier. But if this is too close or it's too dangerous, we turn around, come back on the road we know, take the long route back, waiting for the storm to pass over town before we get there. So we started, working down this road in this direction. As our storm was moving this way, and that's when we had the tornado develop. So we're working this way, eyes on it, knowing this area of interest is passing close to our road. So we don't want to get too close if this is going to be something bad. It actually wasn't that long. We're driving particularly
2 minutes.
yeah, maybe like 3 miles tops, I would think. And hey, we have the tornado form. We get out and have that screaming inflow going into it. Everyone's struggling to try to take pictures of it or capture it. Well, once that happened, we were basically done. We were never going to beat this other storm, the Tucumcari back here. So enjoyed the moment there, watching the tornado. And I don't know if you noticed it, like with the feeling of it, but after that let up, the inflow also let up. So it weakened quite a bit. So you had that really whipping inflow, did its thing, dissipated, and then the inflow lessened up. And I think someone even said, like, oh, I guess it's done now. And like we no longer had that screaming inflow into the storm.
The inflow was just off the charts.
So by that point, you would never even risk going closer after something like that happened. But this storm was already over town, so now it was, let's backtrack here, go this way, and by that point our storm had already hit town and was over here. So it was okay, let's just creep up slowly, make sure we don't get hit by the backside of the hail core. And knowing also, now it's nighttime, that this area just got hit by a major hail core moving slowly. So being aware that there could be flooding on this stretch, there could be ice on the road. We saw there was ice on the road driving through, but you're prepared, you knew where it crossed. Like, okay, we've got to slow down here, there's going to be ice and water on the road. Going to town, saw the hail laying all over the place. And then after that, depending on who you were, we had a couple quick moving around to get like food before the next storm, because we had kind of training there where, hey, let's try to find somewhere still open with food. Oh, we got to drive a little bit, get back before the next storm comes in.
That's actually a little fun.
Yeah.
And that was Thursday.
Crazy.